Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the channel. This is your friendly neighborhood Inkwell Arts here, or you can just call me Ink for short. And this is actually not my first video, but it is one of my first with my actual voice. So please do bear in mind if the video is a little bit less than professional. Also, here's my cat. If you hear me address somebody in the background, that's her. So that's Echo. Say hi to Echo, everybody. That's not important. So, continuing the theme with the channel name and my previous uploads, outside of the jokes or the clips, my first proper video is going to be a tutorial. It's how to draw bust for beginners. This is what I'll just go ahead and label this video as. Now, this is not going to be a by-the-book sort of drawing. It's just going to be how I feel comfortable drawing with. It's going to be curtailed to my style of drawing and my use of techniques. So I'm also, again, please excuse the lack of professionality. I'm recording this with both my hands being used. I draw with my right hand and I'm holding the camera with my left. So I do apologize if it gets a little shaky. Now, so the key to drawing a cohesive character design, especially for what we're using it for, just a bust drawing, which means from the head to just above the shoulders for people who don't know. If you do, I'm sorry I wasted your time with that explanation. So so first of all, what you want to do is, of course, start with a circle. It doesn't have to be perfect. None of my circles are, and I've been drawing for a good I've been drawing since middle school. So anyway, that's unrelated. So this particular drawing, this particular bust creation is going to be of my channel mascot, or my channel character, which I will put his name just up here. His name is Marx. So Marx is a fairly simple character design. But for people who would just like this sort of thing, I'll go ahead and break down all of his character traits from the head to his shoulders. So to start, Marx is a Siberian Husky. So we'll put this down. So what are the components of a canine? Of course, this all seems very simple and rudimentary, but not a lot of people really think about this stuff from what I see, and for other people who maybe just don't think about this kind of thing. So to start, Huskies normally have pretty decently sized ears. Both sides. I usually draw from about this height on the circle. I start from up here, from the side of the head, and then his ears specifically curve up, or they go up and curve in, and then they sort of swing back out. And the title's in the way, so I'm going to erase this real quick. I really should have thought of a scale for this, but it's fine. Okay. So, I'll just get rid of the whole title, and then, of course, I'm sure people can read nowadays, so hopefully, if I remember to, I can just put the title in the video, and that's that. So anyway, so back to the sort of character trait list. So he's a husky, so his ears are normally going to be pretty big. Now, scale, in terms of creating animalistic characters, is pretty important. So, especially because the scale of certain animal proportions are pretty unique to the animal itself. So, for example, his ears are about medium size. So we'll just put mid ears. So his ears, let me pan over. His ears will go up to about here. They would curve in and then back out. Not exactly like that, but it's similar to that sort of thing. So let me just I'll just start out. And the way I draw things is I normally draw in the sort of rough sketched in style. So short little burst of lines, just so it gives me good control over my pencil. Not everyone draws this way, but it's how I feel comfortable drawing, as I prefaced. So his ears are not exactly this kind of polygonal, but I normally start and then I stop right around here for the curve. I then go to the other end of his ear, and then I sort of ground it near the top of his head. And then this is a simple curved line, so it goes up to about here. Actually, so his ears actually start, they curve in a little sharper, like that. So then, after this, I now have a good sense of scale for how sharp the curve on his ear must be. So now that I have that, I can go in and re-sketch his ear, and then have it curve back out, and then round off the tip of his ear, like that. So we have one good ear to start, and then we'll worry about fine details and character placement later. So then we also want to add guidelines to the circle so that we have a good sense of what direction he's facing. Now, the direction is made by this line going on the what would be considered the y-axis. And then this one, so you also have one going across his face, which would be considered the x-axis. I know a lot of people do understand this, but I would like to just give a comprehensive breakdown. So I might actually go back and resize this ear. So one thing I will mention to all my beginners who may stumble onto this video and are wanting to pick it up, art is just a simple matter of trial. It's trial and tribulation. I don't think that's the right. That's what's the word? It's escaping me right now, but it's not. It wouldn't exactly be trial and tribulations. It's trial and error. There we go. So drawing is just trial and error. So I will 100% preface this right now. You are going to mess up. You are going to make it not look how exactly how you want it to. That is perfectly okay. There is no such thing as a perfect first sketch. There are such things as perfect sketches and perfect concepts. There is no such thing as a perfect first draft sketch. Now, I will preface that Marx, this character I'm drawing, I have drawn him hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times, and I still get him wrong. So, never feel discouraged if you make a lot of mistakes. That is one thing that I see is the Achilles heel of a lot of artists, a lot of my friends who are artists. They always think their mistakes tell them that they shouldn't keep drawing. And that's hard to watch, because a lot of my friends are like that. Which is, of course, I imagine that's hard for anybody to watch. But that's just how art is. It's just a matter of picking up the pencil, erasing what you got, or erasing what you think doesn't look good. And for example, we got the ear here, and then just restarting. So we'll redraw the ear to a more appropriate scale, so his ear looks appropriate for where it is attached on his head. Something like that. So again, this is never concrete. You can always just erase it and redraw it if you want to. You don't have to, but for expediency's sake, we'll leave it there. You can always touch up your drawings later, even after they're finished. There's no shame in it. So we will go ahead and mirror the other ear. And of course, it doesn't have to be a perfect mirror, 100%. You can always just add differentiates. So let's erase this list just so we can have some room. And erase that. I just booped the camera. I'm sorry. There we go. So you can kind of start to see how the canine looks are supposed to be coming in. Especially with the scale we're going with, it's pretty apparent to see we are drawing a canine of sorts. So I'll have his ear kind of come out like that, and then up like that. See, now that's actually a really good scale. So I can go back and I can redraw this ear to mimic this one. We can do that later, but of course that's for later. So now the way I draw huskies, so we'll put down a list just over on this side, small, so it's not in the way. So we got Marx. So what is he? He's a husky. So he's naturally a very fluffy dog looking character. So he also has medium ears, so we have that. We'll put mid ears again. So we can check that off. And we have the dog shape coming in, so we can also partially check that off. So what else do they have? So huskies have pretty wide snouts, but they're also a little bit on the chunky side, or on the short side, I suppose. So we'll have a short snout, or we'll have a short muzzle, and we'll also put in wide. So, going back to the X and Y axis, you want to put in your secondary guidelines around the center of the face, and depending on what way their head is supposed to be oriented, you would not have to perfectly mirror it, but you would put it to where the position would make sense. So, for example, Marx is, let me just kind of thicken this one out a little bit more. Marx is facing off this way. So we have this line bent in the direction he's facing. Let me get a bit more of an angle here. So you have this line that is going in the way that he is facing. He's facing off this way, so this line would be bent over this way. Now, for the lines going across on the x-axis, we'll call it, you want it to have it to where if he's looking down slightly, you would bend it into a sort of really wide U shape. If he's looking up at something, it would go slightly under the middle of the circle, and it would go up to where the center of his face would be. And then it would go back down and then meet on the other side, on the same side that you started. So Marx is just looking straight ahead, so we can just start right here. And you always want it to be sort of bent either way, just so it gives a dynamic angle. So we'll have this go across like this. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be a general direction. So we now have what looks to be a three-dimensional shape, using nothing but some bent lines. Now, Marx also has unique characteristics, like any character should, if they want to be considered, well, unique. So, Marx also has little bits of cheek fluff. Just to kind of hone, well, for one, he has little bits of hair coming up here, but we'll also do that later. Hence the fine designs. We'll start doing the designs that'll bring in his silhouette, and then we can go back and worry about finer design placements. Now, Marx has cheek fluff starting just around the center of his face. Now, the way I do the way I draw his cheek fluff is I start right in here. I'm going to make sure the camera's focused, please. Thank you, camera. Now, the way I'm going to draw his cheek fluff is I always start on his farthest side from the camera. So I get a good feel of the direction I want his cheek fluff to go. So now he's facing away, so his farthest cheek fluff will stick up a bit higher than the one closest to us to give a good sense of it being obscured by the rest of his facial details. So it'll be shorter, and it'll also stick up just a little bit more. Think of it sort of, the best way I describe it to people is think of how characters like Mickey or Sonic, I'll just do a little rudimentary sketches real quick. How you have characters like Mickey, when they're facing towards you, their ears stick up. And when he's facing one direction, or when he's facing towards you, his ears stick straight up, going that way. But when he faces another direction, we'll have him go that way, he has one ear on the top, and then he has one ear on the side. Opposites, and then it'd be the opposite problem for Sonic. So drawing a little Sonic the Hedgehog silhouette here, his quills would always be facing a direction of sorts, even if he's looking at something. he always looks like he's facing this way. Because a lot of people won't really get how, in my personal opinion, the design of his quills facing outward, if he was looking straight on at you, this is a very rough sketch, I'm aware, but if he was looking straight on and his quills were facing you, then it looks kind of weird and a little bit muddled. You could still tell it's him, but it's not as appealing as having his quills face straight out, especially in a 2D sense. If it's like a 3D model, then it doesn't make sense to have his quills do this, but it would work for like a stylized choice. So, just an idea of a thing. Just an idea of how style could work into character design, and how someone's specific drawing style could make that character actually look like the character it's supposed to be. I'm going on a tangent, I apologize. So, his cheek fluff that would be closest to the camera. So, the way we're drawing him is, we'll have him facing us, so we'll put his eyes just right here, just mark them down, and then we can get back to him later. And his other cheek fluff that would be closest to the camera, or the viewer, would be a little bit longer, and it would kind of stick out a little bit more. So then his cheek fluff will go down here, and I usually give him 2-pronged cheek fluffs. So then we'll also do this one over here. Again, doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to show the idea you're working with. So now I normally have it go all the way down and meet together on the bottom of his head. So now we have that sort of canine-esque, fluffy little puppy appearance. So now we also have, I'll also just quickly jot down Fluffy, which we have that. And then when I mentioned he has little bits of hair. So up here he has a little stylized haircut, and it's pretty much just a little swoop made of 3 different tufts of fluff or hair, whatever you want to call it. So I'll also erase this little trial and error symbol because my point has been made. And here we go. So I usually start from just shy of the center of his head to give a good look at his angle, and then I start by I kind of ramp up on one tuft, and then I stop just on the inside of his ear, and then I curve back in. So that's one, and it gives him like a little kind of, it reminds me of that one character from not the Goonies, but it's something, Little Rascal, that one guy from Little Rascal. So now we take this and we start from this little gap right here, and then we keep going down. So now his hair stops right around in here, and then we curve back in one more time. So now instead of that, the way I do it is, instead of starting from here and then curling back around, I start from over here, and I then I go I start on the outside of his third cheek, or his third hair floof, I call it, and then I build it from the outside. Not exactly the easiest process, but it's one I prefer. And then I normally take a few redraws just to get it looking right. This goes right here, and that curves in. So his third cheek fluff, I keep saying cheek fluff, his third hair tuft is always his thickest. So now that we have his hair drawn in, we can worry about his other dog aspects. Going back to the muzzle here, the way I draw his muzzle is a little bit more complicated than drawing humans. Of course, it's an animal. So you start from about this center point here, and then whatever direction it's going when it meets in. So he's looking down and he's looking to the right. So you'd always want to go down and to the right like this. So it's a little less of an extreme downward angle. So it would be more along the lines of more to the right and then down slightly. So this is where his nose will be. So I'll just quickly sketch in a rough little dog nose. So Marx's nose is a pretty simple little kind of curvy triangle, just like that. So now you can kind of see how his facial structure is coming together. So in terms of actually drawing a muzzle for him, it's a little bit simpler. So you start from the top left of the nose, you come up just a little bit, and then you go back to the center of his nose, and when you get to this line, you curve upwards so it looks like everything's connected. So now you can kind of see everything coming in together, and then you go back here and then you start drawing down and then connect that with him. So you don't have to do it like that, but that's just something I like to do, just to give him more of a cute puppy appearance. And for the other side of his muzzle, instead of connecting it to his jaw right here, you have it go in just a little bit farther, I'd say right around there, and then you draw his bottom jaw. So his bottom jaw would start right around here, and it would go in like this. Alright, simple stuff. This isn't exactly how I always draw him, but again, always refine it. So now we'll clean up his profile so we can get rid of all these little graphite marks, give him a bit more of a cleaner appearance. And we'll also get rid of some of these lines just so it looks like everything's connected. And also just quickly redraw his jaw just so it's clean. I normally have both hands on the paper, so it's a little bit more frustrating for me to draw like this. Or if you want to be a little bit more stylish or stylized with it, also just draw out his nose a little bit farther. So we'll start. Sorry if I keep going off to the side. So we'll go a little bit farther out. There we go, like that. And then same process, start from the left and then just build it in. And then once you have the top of his muzzle connected, you can go ahead and just erase this line. That's usually when I feel comfortable doing it. And then we could erase the rest of his guidelines. So that way we have a clean little handsome lad. And then we can also get rid of this. So something I've been told helps when drawing this little doggo here is if he's facing down far enough, you can just get away with drawing his top snout and then have that connect to the bottom of his cheek. So you won't need to draw his jaw, but you still have the coherence of him looking like a doggo. And then actually I'll just have that curve be a little less dramatic. Right around in there. There we go. So now we have the impression that he's looking off to the side, but he's looking at us. So now just draw this little guideline so we have a good idea where his muzzle, the center of his muzzle is, and we can just draw everything around that. So we have this little line going on the other side of his muzzle, have a little bit more of a rounded look to it. And then we could draw this one, which will go into his cheeky little smile. So I'll have him go all the way up like this. Now, I normally don't draw Marx with a smile that big, but we'll kind of just thicken it up and curve in like that. His little cheek, or his little smile. Now again, this is a super rough drawing, but it's pretty much just serves as a little bit of a guide to get people started at least. So now, the way I normally do, he's also got sharp little toofs. So we'll put in sharp toofs, and then we'll just quickly scribble on a point. So you start from the bottom of his snout, and then it goes down, and then you meet it. Then this one, since it's facing us a little bit more, we can just do that. So it gives him kind of a cheeky little nom-nom toofers. But if he has a more full smile and he's showing his teeth, what I like to do is I just go ahead and shorten his little teeth a little bit, just so there's enough room for the rest of his mouthful of teeth. Still let them keep their sharp appearance, but it gives him more of a... It keeps the design from being too cluttered. Actually, we'll move this one just a little bit over here, so that way it looks a little bit more appealing. And then, just so we can have him greet us with a bit of a full smile, we'll draw his bottom snout. So his jaw would end just around the center line here. So you can draw a little line right there if you want. And then you can have it come down. And then you just join it up with his cheek fluff. So now in terms of drawing teeth, if you're wanting to draw him just with a full set of smile, you can draw a little teeth line here. And then just kind of fill it in with little stripes. This of course isn't remotely anatomically correct, but hey, who's splitting hairs here? And then normally I do this with a lot of characters. If you want to have a sharp little fang here, you can, but we already have two sharp teeth over here, so it's fine. So there we go. We got a little dog. This isn't, of course, the best looking thing. It's just because it's so simple. I normally take a lot longer to draw this, to draw things like this. So bear with me here. It's also been almost 30 minutes. I'm sorry I've taken so much of your time. So now, going back on the process, we'll just erase the top of his ear and mirror and try and marry it up with the original one, or the better looking one on his right. There we go. And you don't always have to mimic each design. You could always have him be a little bit more lopsided. Make it a little fun. So now going back on detailing, we'll start up here in his ears, and then we'll add a curve that goes in. So that's the outside rim of his ear, and then we can just draw some ear fluff. There we go. And then that actually looks more like a kidney bean. And then just do the same thing for the other side. And Marx also has more of the silver Siberian Husky face shape, or like fur design, I guess you would call it. So he has the kind of rounded, sort of Mickey Mouse-esque face, which goes into his cheek fluff. And now his eyes are a lot more detailed, so we can get rid of one. And then I usually go for something like that. So we have one, and then we can get the other. And then just erase the straight lines and then any mistakes. And there we go. Not exactly the cleanest in the world, but hey, it's effective. So again, you can always go back and refine previous shapes. For example, instead of what I used to do at some point is I'll pull open this page real quick and let me sift through the rest of my sketchbook. So this isn't a character I normally rough out like that. So going back on a previous design, this is actually the design I use for my commission sheet, which is completely different. It's just one of the first ones I have. You'll notice I give him more of a kind of a cat-like appearance, really. And then for another example, I will quickly sift through this. I have one of him in a varsity jacket, which is the same one here. It's just a bit more clean, if I can find it. The struggles of having a full sketchbook. And he's around here somewhere. There he is. So you could also do it to where you don't have to draw the muzzle outright, but you can still draw the line to depict it. So he also has lopsided ears and then actual pants, but this is a bust drawing. We can worry about that later. So just a couple examples, really. Let me just go back through. There he is. So going back, let me flip this over. So taking all that into consideration, we can redraw his muzzle area because that's actually a little more unsettling than I intended it to be. So if we want it to be super simple, we can just, for one, we can erase all this. Again, going back to the whole trial and error notion. We can simplify it so it's not overly complex. So instead of drawing a muzzle and muddying up the design, we can leave it to be implied. So we'll have him face the camera a little bit more, and I'll buff out his cheek fluff a little bit. This. There we go. So there, that's all. That's already way more visually appealing. So then bring back his guideline a little bit, just so we can get a good placement of his nose. We can go ahead and just draw it just off to the side a little bit, and then I'd say just right under his eye. See, already a marked improvement. And then we can kind of just rough out the design for his muzzle. And if you really wanted to, you could still show that he has one, just make it a lot more simplified. So you could even give him little toofs if you wanted to. There we go. And then to finish out the actual bust part of this, we'll go ahead and just draw him a neck. Can just be a simple one like he's just standing here. And then we'll start with his shoulders. Now, I have heard some people do struggle with shoulder placement, so I'll make this simple. Instead of going out with a curve like that, what I normally do is that is what I do. I draw a neck and then I start adding curves, and I normally have a pretty average shoulder length, so about like that. Now, depending on which direction he's facing, so for example, he's going that way, you would want to have the shoulder in that direction have a tiny bit more of a steeper angle, to show that he's not facing that, to show that he's facing that direction. Now, Marx normally wears a couple layers of clothes. So on top he wears a simple button up or collar button shirt. So we'll just draw the collar, and then we'll have a little line right here, a little square, and then collar again, and draw the little stripe for the buttons, just like that. And then he also wears a hoodie on top of everything. So, sorry, I just had to stretch for a second. We'll draw a bit of a bulked. We'll draw a bit more of a bulked shoulder. And just starting around here. And then since this is a bust design, we can go down to about his upper chest area. So then the hoodie will stop right around here. So then we can extend to about here, and then we'll just kind of bulk out the top of his arms a little bit. And I'll erase the little sharp teeth. Alright, so now for the arm that isn't facing the camera, what I normally like to do is when I draw characters with hoodies and their arms are in their pockets, I'll draw one arm that goes out. I'll draw an arm close to the camera going out this way, and then I'll draw the other one starting at going the same way kind of, and then it'll kind of bend down, and then it'll have the bump where the arm will be going into the sleeve, like that. So it kind of gives it like a weird pear-ish kind of look. This is especially good with things like pullover hoodies, since it's all one thing. You don't have to worry about drawing a zipper or drawing a straight line for a zipper, but it also works for zip-up hoodies. So we can draw the top of his arm going down, like that, and then we can draw, since he wears a varsity jacket at least, we don't have to worry about a zipper, and since it's open so wide, we don't need to depict any buttons. But where there is one thing we do need to depict, and that's his hood. Now going back a little bit, I gotta open my sketchbook back up so you get a good close-up of his chest. So going back just a tiny bit, so I won't have to go back so far. So going back, I have a certain style I like to draw hoods that are down. So that's just in my my commission sheet. I also have multiple different styles, where I have this one of a sort of kind of stylized self-portrait of me wearing a Destiny hoodie. I draw layered. I have a thing. I can do layered hoods, or we have multiple choices, pretty much. That's the long and short of it. We can do a layered hood. We can do a softer looking kind of floaty hood. Give it the sense that the varsity jacket is a cloth jacket, so the hood is super light, rather than a leather jacket, which have sort of thicker, kind of sharper hoods. Or not sharper, but we could do stuff like this, where we have kind of a floaty hood with a massive hood hold. Or like we can do a thick hood lining and a massive hood to show that it's big enough for his doggy head. So we can go ahead and just go with the thicker one with the fluffy hood in the back. So I normally start the hood lining right around this sort of area, and I kind of, for one, I'll start like this, and I start hoods with like a bean-ish kind of shape. So we can do the top here, and this can be the hood lining. So I will just go ahead and go like this. That'll curve down, and then we can rebuild it back out. And then have that go around. And then on this side, we can do the same thing. So normally I would make the hood a little bit smaller, but I do have some form of an excuse now that I'm drawing an open hooded character. And we also did make that cut in a little too sharp. There we go. So now that we have his hood, and he has an open jacket, so the hood is a little bit wider in the opening rather than being closed. And there we go. There's our bust. And then we can just cut it off around here. Ta-da! We now have a dog boy. So this is Marx, and that was my slightly over-detailed drawing or tutorial, I suppose. And we can get rid of his little list here of character traits. Now, some people will probably wonder, why did I decide to do this, right? Some people will probably wonder, why are you doing this? You don't have a whole lot of subscribers, you don't have an audience. Well, that's because, for one reason alone, drawing is pretty much my passion. So, and I have a desire one day to make this world a better place than when I found it, right? So, if I can do that just by helping people figure out how to draw, or just being there, just being some background noise for people who are just doing stuff just for people who need something to focus with, or just being an art tutorial. If someone gets some benefit out of this, hey, I'm happy with it. But, that being said, let's not get into the mushy stuff. This has ran on for a lot longer than it's supposed to be. I'll go ahead and cut this short. So, this was my slightly over-detailed bust tutorial. Again, you don't have to do it with this specific character. You can apply these steps to any character you want to draw, really. If you were looking to do this sort of thing with more detailed characters and you don't know where to start, the best place to be would just go somewhere on the page and then just write out a little list and take note of their character traits. Remember, all it takes is just a circle. Alright. Alright, guys. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys later. This has been Ink Arts, your friendly neighborhood artist, and I'm out. I'll see you later.